Hello everybody, this is Greg with How I Lost Over 100 Pounds and I've kept it off for 30 plus years, where there should be no hesitancy in your weight loss and in your weight maintenance. Today we're going to talk about 10 items that you must buy organic. Now before we begin, if you need help with weight loss, contact me through the Clarity FM link found here in the episode notes. Also check out my 2 books which you can find on Amazon, my podcast, The Awakened Man, which is very health related, and my podcast on movies, The Cinema Rag, which is not. And lastly, if you appreciate my content, there is a link for PayPal. Alright, so is it crucial that you buy organic foods for weight loss and weight maintenance? Yes and no. Is it possible to lose weight and not eat organic food? Certainly. I did it back in the 90s, and they didn't have organic foods really back then, but granted, most of our seeds were not genetically modified, and Monsanto wasn't the gigantic beast that it is now. But there is an endocrine or hormone system dysregulation that can come from consuming a lot of genetically modified crops and a lot of crops that are shot up with antibiotics and pesticides and hormones and all these things like that. So it can play a role in it. So if money is not an object, yes, you should buy organic. But do you need to buy organic for everything? No. Big Grocer, we have an episode here, Big Grocer manipulates us all the time. Big Grocer wants you to think that you got to buy everything organic. A place like Whole Foods preys on the rich to make them think that they have to buy everything organic so they can ratchet up the price. But no, you don't have to buy everything organic. So the Environmental Working Group, the EWG, is a big organization, and every year they publish a list of produce that absorbs the most pesticides, and they call these the dirty dozen. And they also have on the other side of the spectrum produce that's the cleanest, that you don't have to buy organic. They call those the clean 15. And then a lot of produce is in the middle. So the dirty dozen, you ideally should buy organic because these are loaded with pesticides, which then can get in you and they can cause hormone dysregulation. They can cause even cancer. So look at all the cases going up with Roundup right now, the herbicide. Now people are taking Bayer Monsanto to court and they're winning because it's directly linked to lymphoma. But either way, I'm going to give you a list of 10 things that you should buy organic. Some of these are pretty obvious, but some of them maybe not. So let's start with the dairies. Yogurt and milk, so that's 2. Why? Because conventional milk is shot up with recombinant bovine growth hormone, otherwise known as recombinant bovine somatic troponin hormone, RBST. And so they're shot up with that. The conventional cow is diseased. The conventional cow is shot up with antibiotics. We have an episode at The Awakened Man why this is. And most people think that stuff is shot up with antibiotics because the animals are diseased. Yes, they're in filth all the time, the typical cow, the typical chicken. But the other reason is because antibiotics fatten up livestock, and we've known this since the 1950s. And so you make the ancillary argument. If they're fattening up livestock, does it fatten us up because we consume it? Either way, you got to buy yogurt. We have episodes here on the do's and don'ts in yogurt, but you have to buy yogurt and milk. Not so much. I wouldn't necessarily worry about butter and ice cream and those things, but yogurt and milk certainly. Meat, ground beef, whatever beef it is, yes, that should be either free-range cattle or something that demonstrates, again, these labels don't mean much, but demonstrates that they've not been shot up with antibiotics. The typical ground beef that you get at a restaurant or certainly at the supermarket is just absolute garbage. It is just filth. They spray on the chemical, I can't remember the name of it, to make it look pinker than it really is. I remember reading a study that it comes from 12, the typical ground beef that you get at the supermarket comes from 12 diseased cows. I mean, it's just disgusting. So yeah, you need to get free-range meat. Chicken, same thing. So this would be number 4, chicken and eggs. Same thing, free-range. You need to get free-range eggs and chickens. Pastured eggs can cost quite a bit, $4.50. If you know somebody who sells them, it's probably going to be cheaper than at the grocery store. But either way, I've seen studies that 1 pastured egg, so 1 organic egg, essentially is the equivalent of 6 conventional crappy eggs in terms of the nutrient profile. Not to mention the chickens shot up with growth hormones. They're in cages. They're stuck in cages. They shoot them up with antibiotics to make them get fatter, then their legs break, and so they're in these cages just growing, getting shot up. They're all diseased. They have these infections. It's just a horrible life, and that's what we're getting our eggs and our chicken meat. And you've seen pictures of chickens, but they were in 1950 when we bought them, and what they are now. They've been shot up with all this stuff. So again, bad. Fish and seafood. you need to get wild caught fish. Wild caught fish is much more expensive. We have fish farms now, and even in the fish farms, like these other animals, we're shooting them up with antibiotics. And going back to cattle and chicken, to exacerbate the antibiotics that we're shooting up with, we're also giving them genetically modified feed. It's not like they're eating the grass. They're eating GMO feed, GMO soy, and other things that they're feeding them. So that's the other problem. So in the fish farms, they're giving them GMO, they're giving them GMO fish food, but they're also shooting them up with antibiotics. So when it comes to seafood, when you go to the grocery store, make sure you get one that says wild caught. It costs a lot more. You can get it frozen, but same thing. So you're looking at those 5. Then when it comes to the produce, I'll hit the big 5 of the Dirty Dozen, because these are the 5 that are always on there every year. Really quickly, the berries, in particular strawberries, I would tell you, you gotta get them organic. They're very high on the Dirty Dozen list. The spinach and leafy greens, but in particular spinach and kale, always very high. You can buy these organic too. They're relatively inexpensive at the grocery store. Apples, another one that's very high on the Dirty Dozen list. You gotta get those organic as well. Tomatoes, another one that's very high on the Dirty Dozen list. You gotta get those as well. And we can throw in for number 10 some of the other ones that are rounded out. Like typically nectarines are going to be there, peaches are in the Dirty Dozen, but really you really got to focus on the produce as those. Bananas you don't need to get organic. Melons these are typically on the clean 15. They're not that bad, but certainly the other ones you got to get them. So the staples of food, the milk, the meats, the chicken, the eggs, these really. And again, if you say, I don't have the money, and then you go spend $25 at Chili's, you do have the money, you're just not allocating it. And we want to eat a clean diet, because eating a dirty diet, the standard American diet, has led to a lot of comorbidities and a lot of problems. And it can be something that is impeding your weight loss. But even if it's not, like I lost the weight when I was eating junk food back in the 90s, it's affecting your quality of life, because if we're eating stuff that is known to be shot up with chemicals and antibiotics and all these things, it is going to have an eventual systematic effect on our body. Maybe not in a month or 5 months, but in a year, but we're eating the same foods for years, it's going to have a deleterious and pernicious effect. So we should try to eat these organic. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.